Welcome, freaks. Welcome to a special Friday night edition on my channel. It's a short horror story called Replay, written and created by Mother Supreme, Mary Moody. The digital clock projected 2 o'clock in the morning at Shirley's convenience store. Closing time. It said Kimberly B on the lone employee's name tag, which was pinned to the blue button-down smock under the convenience store's logo. She walked the various parts of the store to ensure the customers were gone. The cooler, both bathrooms, and store aisles were all clear. No one remained in the store. It was safe to lock the doors, count the money, restock the store, and go home. Her long blonde hair trailed behind her as she rushed to lock the front doors. They were made of glass, but kept secure with a large lock and alarm. A quick glance outside revealed an absence of cars and people. It was a cold winter night and everyone was in their warm homes, except for her. She rounded the corner, removed the drawer from the cash register, and sat on the floor to count the money. It wasn't exactly the ideal place to count the daily totals and configure the paperwork, but the office felt spooky when she was alone at night. The wind constantly whipped the bush around right outside the office window and usually scared the crap out of her. Paperwork, pen, money, calculator, and 10 minutes. Then the money would be done. All there was left to do was stock the coolers, mop the floor, and it's home to a glass of red wine and late-night scary movies on television. The thought of such relaxation forced her to concentrate on counting the money. One mistake, and she would be there all night trying to fix it. The sound of the toilet flushing in the men's restroom made the blood drain from the young girl's face. She kept perfectly still as she listened closely to the sounds inside the store. The store was empty. She made sure before she locked the front doors. The sound of silence calmed her nerves. Maybe it was just the plumbing. She listened a little while longer before she got back to counting the cash. The cold hand of death crawled down her back, finger by finger, when she heard the water rush out of the faucet in the men's restroom. This time, she placed the money on top of the till and dared to peek over the counter, down the cupcake aisle and to the men's room. A small bit of light emanated underneath the door. Before she could react or come up with some sort of explanation, the bathroom door creaked open and light spilled into the dark store. The girl dropped to the floor and prayed whoever it was in the bathroom didn't see her. She allowed herself to let out a long-held breath, but stopped when she heard footsteps. Someone was approaching the counter. Shit! What am I gonna do? She thought frantically. Without thinking it through, she stayed behind the counter and crawled on her hands and knees to the back of the store. The notion to run and lock herself in the office greatly tempted her, but at the last moment she turned around, crawled back to the cash register, and pushed the silent alarm to trigger a police response. A breath of relief escaped her lips, but she clamped her hands over her mouth in an attempt to hide the noise. But it was too late. The footsteps were right on top of her. With tremendous amounts of trepidation, she looked up. He was white and appeared as if he hadn't shaved in a couple of days. His eyes were brown like hers. A sardonic smile spread across his face the moment their eyes met. A large mass of curly black hair covered his ears and ran along his eyebrows. He reached for her and she lunged away from him, but he managed to grab hold of her smock. She screamed when she realized she couldn't run away. Without warning, pain exploded into her back and warm liquid ran into the back of her jeans. She howled from the pain, but did not stop trying to get away from her attacker. It was a small town. The police would be there soon. She had to stay alive until they got there. Inspired with the fact that she might actually survive, the girl spun around and punched the guy right in his nose. However, he did not bleed. Her punch was merely a swat that gave her just a few seconds to escape. The girl went left, over the counter, before he could retaliate. The unfortunate situation forced the girl to forget something was wrong with her back. As she leapt over the counter, the wound in her back opened. She screamed with all of her might and her face fell first into the floor. Her face landed to the ground with a sickening thwack, and almost forced her to throw up right there. Every part of her face was all right, except her nose. It was definitely broken. The pain blinded her, and instinctively, her hands reached for her nose. She didn't know blood leaked from her nose, and the shock of seeing her own blood stopped her from reaching the front doors before he did. The light coming from the men's room ran down the aisle to the front counter and reflected off the long butcher knife in the attacker's hand. She let loose a gasp of fear and looked into his eyes. The light reflecting from the knife combined with the pain in her back and her face left her defenseless as he plunged the knife into her stomach. She tried to scream, but felt as if the wind was knocked out of her. She managed to smother a small scream when she fell to the ground. She felt her body being pushed into her back, and she came face to face again with her attacker. He straddled her chest, pinned her arms to the ground with his knees. The expression on her face was malice mixed with excitement. He managed to keep his breathing steady as he held the knife high up in the air around him. She shook her head and pleaded with him to stop. She didn't want to die, but he just smiled at her like a child who promised to eat all of his greens at dinner in exchange for a hearty dessert. Hope was gone. She told herself to keep her eyes closed and not to watch what was going to happen. Repeatedly, stab, 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 stab. When he was done, he put the knife inside of his belt and got off of her chest. The sight of her lifeless body gave him an excitement that started at his toes and exploded into every part of his body. Then he fled the store through the front doors using her keys she left on the counter. A few moments later, the girl opened her eyes, but too afraid to move her head. She didn't see him leave the store while she was unconscious, so she feared that he was still inside with her. The notion of moving her body was out of the question. She had to stay conscious until the police arrived and called for an ambulance. A deep, jagged breath left her lungs and it made her breathe better. In fact, every second that went by, she felt slightly better. If she stayed still long enough, she could reach the phone and call for help in case the alarm never notified the police. A bright flash of light blinded her as she lied on the ground. She screamed at the thought that this was the moment that she would die. But the light wasn't the bright lights of heaven. It was the headlights of a police cruiser. She let out a breath of relief. Everything was gonna be all right. She would make it out of this alive. The sounds of the doors closing and voices confirmed the police were real, and they were definitely in the parking lot. "See, what'd I tell you?" the female police officer said to her partner. "There's no one in the store." "No, I'm here, I'm here!" the girl shouted from inside the store. She forced herself to ignore the pain so she could stand. Maybe the officers just couldn't see her. The stab wounds were deep and ripped open when she tried to stand. She fell back to the floor and waited for the pain to subside. The voices of the officers were smothered by the glass, but Kimberly remembered them talking as they got closer to the front doors. "It happened before you came here," the female police officer said. "Probably 2 years ago. A girl was closing the store by herself one night at 2 o'clock in the morning. Someone hid in the store after she closed up and killed her. Stabbed her 6 times. "Holy shit, in this town?" a male's voice asked. "Did you guys catch him?" "No, but the girl hit the store's panic button. By the time we got here, she was dead and he was gone. No one saw a thing." "The security cameras didn't catch anything?" "Well, they did, but it's an old system. Everything was black and white and fuzzy. Only thing we could make out was the tapes was the guy was white. Whole thing was video recorded, and I do mean everything. But nothing to break the case. The employees say the store's been haunted since that night. My niece worked there last year. She told me lots of stories about this place. But it doesn't matter to me what she said. I know this place is haunted." "Oh yeah? How?" "Every so often, the silent alarm is pushed at 2 in the morning after the employees have left for the night. No one's in the store when we get here." "So?" "So, if there's no one inside, who the hell is pushing the damn button? Owner had the alarm company out here. They said there's nothing wrong with it. Someone is pushing that button. The captain had the owner look over the security tapes at the time the button's pushed, and there ain't no one there. Now you explain it to me, because the only explanation I can come up with is that place is haunted with the spirit of the girl killed in there. No! The girl inside the store shouted as loud as she could. I'm in here! Help me! Well, that's pretty creepy, Rogers, he said to his partner as if he had heard nothing. Well, it's the truth, honey. And when you take over the night shift, you're gonna believe it too, the female officer replied to her partner. He scoffed at her. Yeah, right. Now let's get the hell on up out of here. This place gives me the creeps. All right. I guess you were right. There's no one here, he said. Hey, what was the name of that girl that got killed? Kimberly Bowen. She went to school with my niece. The woman's voice faded away. My name is Kimberly Bowen, the girl inside the store thought. It can't be true. I'm not dead. She managed to get up and open the front doors of the store. The police officer sat in their cruiser, staring straight at her. Hope flared to life in her heart as she thought they actually saw her, but it deflated when the man reversed the car and drove away. Then it hit her. What the officer said did happen to her. She was the girl killed 2 years ago when attacked while closing Shirley's. And she was the one pressing the alarm because this wasn't the first time she was forced to replay her death. Kimberly stayed on the floor until it was time to close the store tomorrow night. The end. Guys, if you would like to read more of my short stories, you can go check out my website. It's Moody at wordpress.com. Link is in the description below. You can go read more of my mini short stories. Thank you all very much for being here. I look forward to reading your comments below. Mother Supreme says, have a wonderful evil night.